gospel. In Matthew, he avoids that issue entirely, and is not denying his divinity. Now, there are many examples of the later Gospels changing the earlier Gospel for their own purposes. So in Mark, Jesus is not a Torah-observant Jew. He says the food laws have been abrogated, you can eat pork, basically. But in Matthew, he corrects Mark and has Jesus teaching Torah observance to all disciples, be they Jew or Gentile.
Well, that's not true.
But then in John, and I haven't got to John yet, John, you have a very different kind of gospel from the other three. There, Jesus comes from another world. He comes from heaven. He's the divine Son. He comes into the world. He is incarnate, and the Word became flesh in John chapter 1, verse 14, I think. And he is divine in some sense. So if you look at the whole timeline, the earliest gospel, Mark, Jesus denying he is God, saying there is echoing the Shema of Deuteronomy, which is found in the Quran itself.
So are you done with your script, Paul?
And then all the way to John, where you have the exalted who is divine. So how do you explain this?
Simple.
Well,
Okay.
in 99%, and I remember E.P. Sanders, the great American Jesus scholar, writing about this. He said that 99% of biblical scholars in the last 200 years have concluded the following: that John's gospel represents a highly interpreted, highly developed account about Jesus.
You have to prove that.
And to that extent, it's not historical, compared to the much earlier Jesus tradition found in Mark and Q and elsewhere, where we have the much more historical Jesus.
By the way.
And in the early tradition, Jesus is not divine.
He is divine.
He denies he is divine in Mark chapter 10. So when you quote those passages in John's Gospel,
Jesus Christ, Son of God.
they're there, but they are a highly interpreted account that is not, according to the experts, it's not really historical.
Allah had a son,
and that's how I benefited enormously from New Testament studies in that regard. Now, you may reject biblical scholarship. Some Christians do. I don't. I think it's many useful tools and skills and conclusions one can benefit from. And many Christians accept biblical scholarship in the Church of England, the Catholic Church, even some in the Orthodox churches do accept biblical scholarship.
Well,
Subhanallah.
Thank you. The thing is,
here.
Oh, they're both out now, aren't they?
Wow.
No,
Stay here, by the way, I just wanted to mention this.
They're trying to destroy our conversation.
No, stay right here.
That is how generally
So,
what
Paul,
we say.
how do you account
Those
for
are
the
the
fact
unfortunately.
that the beginning of
By the way,
Gospel of Mark,
you see here, we had a beautiful conversation with you.
yeah, and then
We have different faiths. We don't believe what you believe in. You don't believe what we believe. In the same time, we have respectful and productive discussion.
I thought the
Until
Quran
some
says you can
people
have
look at this.
religions as friends.
Until some people those people actually they misrepresent Christianity.
How so?
Unfortunately, they misrepresent it because in the
Sheikh,
heckling,
what is Christianity?
in heckling, when heckling. How they are, that's their behavior.
So,
and that's the problem.
I agree with you.
And that is the problem. And actually, those people
this is
are
the source of a lot of the
teaches
problems.
that Christ is not God.
and that
Why
makes
does the
actually
Gospel
many
of
people
Mark
actually
begin with the fact that
to even to reject part of the things people rejecting Christianity. Look at this.
43, ayah 81.
You see here?
If the
That's not the way of having
Excuse me.
Muhammad will have to worship him.
Is it okay?
So
do you mind
therefore, the
if we
Gospel of
just
Mark,
this-
according to the
this-
Quran,
this
is
debate?
preaching that Christ is divine. So now
Okay.
what's wrong?
So,
Please, one second. So on this, go on,
on the
Paul.
subject, I mean, do you accept an historical investigation of the Gospels?
You've run through a
Well,
script
what
with
do-
no
do-
evidence.
Do you, or
so-
do you reject that
Yes,
in
I
the
do.
sense of, well, I prefer seeing them as the Word of God, they're infallible,
Yeah.
but not to look at them historically?
No. Okay. So what? As an Orthodox Christian,
Yeah.
we go straight to the source of who put them books together. The teachings of the Christianity was brought up by a community of people.
Yep.
Oral traditions, very important. That oral tradition it wasn't just like
And not in one location.
just
across
like
the world at the same time.
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Muslim would
yeah,
know
Yeah, they copied us.
the Quran off by heart and
Yeah.
recite it. But the Christians they could do that's why Jesus spoke in parables.
Yeah.
So the community grew. So from there that growth before the Bible was put together, they had beliefs and they knew what they knew.
Yes.
So now when we come to all this, Paul, what you're saying, and you're right,
No, he's not right.
there are contradictions
He's not right.
in
No.
in interpretations of the
He's not
Bible,
right.
the English version, the James version, the new NIV, and all this. They do, and there's a feminist Bible. There's so much all this. So Where do we get our teaching? And how do we interpret? For example, when you hit on that verse, for example, one of the verses, like when Jesus said,
why do you call me good? There's
why
no
do you
one
call
good.
me good?
Yeah,
There's only
yeah.
one is God.
Yeah.
So it's how you interpret it and how probably Western scholars interpret it.
It's not Western scholars. These are all scholars.
But look,
you tell me
we go by.
They're not.
that way?
There's not British people who are saying this.
Yeah, but
These are Christian scholars throughout the world.
Yeah, but we
Okay,
go.
you
We
came
go.
up from India.
Or
Romania.
We go straight to
Okay.
the source that was
Only
brought
English
down
speakers.
by the bishops from the church history, right from the time. How was these things
So
interpreted?
the question is, I hear what you're saying, and from what you're
So
saying
we know
is
the
very
truth.
orthodox, and
Yeah.
that is an authentically orthodox perspective.
And we go by the
I
Koine
get
Greek.
that. But the Koine Greek, excellent. But this is the common Greek of the time, which the
Yeah.
Gospels are written in.
Yes.
But that's the point. If you look at the detail and you look at once you see that
In
there
Greek.
is a literary dependence in the Greek, i.e., someone's copying from someone else, and then you see the changes that were made in the Greek by later Gospels, the question then doesn't go away.
Where do you go?
What you see, you may interpret
You'd have to prove
Mark
copying,
chapter
that's the
10
problem.
differently. But Matthew changed the words of Jesus
You're
to
pushing me,
remove
by
the
the way.
denial that
I'm
he
still,
was
so don't push me,
divine.
please.
I didn't touch you.
And the question
Get
is,
out of here.
why then did Matthew do that? And many scholars, again, this is not a proof thing, like a scientific experiment, a chemistry experiment that
Yeah.
I can prove
Well,
to you
you're gonna
by
have to prove it, 'cause you made a claim,
scientific
so prove
experiment.
it.
Yeah,
But the question is,
That's fine.
once you get
What
they're
hermeneutic
copying,
principle are you
to
using?
explain
That's what you
why
gotta
gospel writers change the words of Jesus. And for me, I find it most plausible that Matthew, I can't prove this, but it
Okay,
seems
so
a
it's a
very
claim only
plausible
then.
definition.
So I have to believe you.
That
It's a
the
plausible
reason why
definition.
Matthew changed the word Jesus was because he was embarrassed by Jesus' denial of his divinity. And at the end of the first century,
Okay.
in Matthew's community, talk about communities, where Jesus was believed to be divine in some sense, this was not a belief that you could have Jesus espousing. So they just simply changed what Jesus said in Mark.
Lies.
Now that's a very plausible explanation. Now you may reject that. I find it very plausible, but you have reasonably you have to offer an explanation that is
You haven't offered
consistent
one, you
with
just said your opinion.
with all the observations that we have made so far. And I've not heard an explanation that can explain why Matthew changed the words of Jesus
Well-
that is consistent with what he actually did, removing Jesus denying that he is divine and making him not say that. Why would Matthew do it? That's my question.
So
and the
Matthew
other
didn't
thing,
do that.
and the second thing is this.
It's the only problem.
Christians love quoting from the Gospel of John, understandably. Jesus says amazing things. I am the light of the world. Before Abraham was, I am.
Yeah.
I am the resurrection and the
Begotten
life.
Son, and as well.
Endlessly, all these amazing I am statements. Ego emi in Greek.
Elohim.
And it's fascinating because it looks like, many scholars would say he's taking the divine name before Abraham was, I am, in Greek. It says say that. The problem is this, okay? Jesus went around saying these things, according to John, in public, all over the place, to everyone, his disciples, to the unfriendly Jews, everyone. I am this, I am that. But nowhere, no other gospel, no other source we have ever records Jesus saying any of these things. In Mark,
So
our earliest
that's a
gospel,
fallacy.
Jesus never says,
Are you
I am
implying
the
that
light
for
of the
something to be
world.
true, it has to
In
be
Matthew,
said
he
over
never
and
says,
over
I
again
am
in
the
all
resurrection of
Gospels?
the life. In Luke, he never says, before
Okay.
Abraham was, I am.
And the
In
begotten
Q-
Son as well.
and Q, which
So
is also
all
a
the
very early
Gospels
source,
talk about him
which
rising
is
from the grave.
a
So
very
that means
early
it's true
source.
then,
In
'cause
the
they
Q
don't talk about
source, Jesus never speaks like that. In the other two other sources
Well,
called
you gotta
M
show me the
and
Q source.
L, Jesus never speaks
You
like
need to show me
this.
the sources as
So
well
we
then.
have
Show
to
me them,
account.
so we can
If
see.
Jesus, Luke says in his prologue, dear Theophilus, I give you an orderly account of all the things that have happened amongst us, so you may know the truth of what you have believed. Just giving a biography of Jesus, chapter after chapter. He never has Jesus speak like this. He never says, I am the light of the world. So how do we account for
So
this
in
fact?
Luke 1,
According to the
Elizabeth
scholars,
literally says
but the
that when
consensus
Mary comes
is
to come and see
that
her,
John
that she's
puts
been
the word.
visited by the
John's
mother of her
gospel
Lord.
is a
So the mother of God. So again,
his beliefs
even
about
Luke
Jesus
crashes
being
the
the
line.
light of the world. So he puts those words on Jesus' lips and has him say, "I am the light of the world." Not that Jesus actually said any of these things.
How can you
It's
prove
what
he
you
didn't?
believe about these things.
Because
so
the
top scholars
earliest
at
sources
King's
claim he
College,
did.
who are
So
priests,
what's the counter
people I
evidence to it?
know, have argued this that these are confessional documents. So John would say, "I believe Jesus is the light of the world," and he puts these words on the lips of Jesus. because they're
Prove
not
that.
there in the earlier sources.
They don't
If
have to
Jesus,
be
the
there.
problem is this: if Jesus went around talking like this, why did no one ever record
Exactly.
Jesus talking like this
Because they
until the
wrote to
end of the
different
first century,
communities
in the
who
very
needed
last
different
gospel,
things.
which is a highly interpreted,
And by the way,
creative
the Gospel of
belief
John
about Jesus?
can be
argued
argued
That's
to be
the
written
challenge.
before 70
And
AD
I've never heard
because of
any
John
Christian
5:2.
ever respond to this.
Well, my
ever.
Let me respond
my
to it.
response to this,
So-
which is a good point, very
Respond to
clear
us.
that John's gospel came later
Yeah.
and made Jesus God.
No, that's not true.
I'm
From
saying that
his
the
words.
words,
He made him
these sayings,
divine
why are
and all
these
that.
sayings only found in one gospel? The most
Yeah.
juicy,
Because
highest
John
Christological
is allowed
statements
to have
where he
his own
claims
interpretation
divinity.
of Jesus Christ.
Mark knows nothing about this, neither does Luke, neither does Matthew, neither does Q, neither does M. All of our
Matthew, Mark,
sources,
Luke, and
no
John
one
believe
ever
Christ is
records
God,
Jesus
so
talking
it's
like this.
all good.
But lo and behold, at the end of the first century, suddenly, all of these statements, Jesus walks around
He's
talking like this all the
divine
time.
and all that.
See, it doesn't,
He's
the
divine in all
best
the Gospels.
explanation is that these words have been creatively added and put on the lips of Jesus. He
No.
never actually
The
said them.
interpretation is
And
that
that,
you
in my
don't read the
experience,
Gospels
when I
well
was a
enough. That's the
Christian
only
and I
problem.
discovered this,
You weren't a
it
Christian,
shook my
Paul.
faith as a Christian.
You weren't a
And I went
Christian.
from commentary to commentary to commentary, trying to find some way out of this problem.
Did you read any
It was a
church
problem
fathers?
for me then. Why
Oh, so
why
only
is John the
contemporary
only one
scholars,
ever
I
to
see.
record these public statements? And and everyone's telling me, all these scholars were saying in their books, because John puts these
So
words
if a
on the
scholar
mouth of
says something,
Jesus.
then you
They
believe
all
it.
say it,
So
because
your ulama
historically
are
it
the
makes
scholars
no
only.
sense.
All right,
Historically
got
it
it.
makes no sense.
So, okay.
That's challenging, having this person shut
No,
in
don't
my
worry.
ear.
Yeah, no,
by the
Trying
way,
to
by the way.
All your
articulate
questions.
my
By the
case
way,
to you.
no Christian
Thank
can answer
you,
it for
thank you
you.
for
Let
listening.
me answer it for
See,
you.
the problem is-
I'm a Christian.
Sorry?
This guy
The problem is
is a scholar.
No,
No,
he's
I'm not a
not.
scholar. I'm not a
He-
scholar.
He's not no damn scholar.
Why do people say
He
this?
studied his theology and he knows what
He
Yeah.
This
just
guy
repeats the scripts.
was taken to shreds
No.
by Muhammad Hijab.
Ultimately,
When he
was
guy doesn't
saying
even
here
know his own
that
religion.
he
Listen,
was a
listen.
Christian,
Can
and he
you?
was
I want to ask you a question.
Yes.
There's something for me.
I need to answer him,
Yeah.
but finish.
No, you
Yeah,
don't.
but-
Yeah,
yeah.
if you have a response,
I want
that'd be
to.
great.
I want. Your breath stinks. Just get.
Your
I need
breath
to
is like
answer you,
camel
but-
pee,
All right.
Sheikh. Please.
So,
When you're ready- when you're ready.
okay, now here. You know the issue is there is one question here.
What is it?
Now
That's too much.
John
So, Paul, I'm right here.
is
Talk to me.
is someone
Right?
who
Like I said,
you
for you,
said copied
boss.
from Mark, correct?
Yes.
Now,
prove it. That's what I'm
now
gonna
the
say.
That's a
problem
consensus
is
of virtual
the problem
scholars.
is from my
Okay,
understanding
really? Well,
that
in
that one
scholars also
who
agree
could
that
be
all
the eyewitness